Hello everyone and welcome to the Fundraising Fundamentals webinar. My name is Beth. I am the School Operations Manager here at Schools Plus.
Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl. I'm the Director of Donor Relations at Schools Plus. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to have a mix of on screen with us in the corner and some slides that we're going to work through today. We encourage you to ask us questions throughout. There is a chat function that you can use. If you are on a computer, there'll be a bubble that you can click on, a little speech bubble, and you can click on that and you have the ability to type your questions. If you're on your phone, there is a speech bubble at the bottom of your phone and you click chat and you should be able to tap through some questions for us. So we'd love any questions to come through as we go. Today we're going to cover three elements to the presentation. So the first one is going to be around your project. So putting together that perfect project so that you're able to talk to a donor about what it is that you're trying to raise funds for. The second part is around finding funds. So you've got a great project. So how are you going to find funds to help support that project? And lastly, we're going to cover our online fundraising platform, which we've developed for schools and associations called Fundraise Yourself. So let's get started.
Terrific. Well, I'd love to start by giving you a bit of an overview of Schools Plus. I can see from the names we know who have joined us today that a few of you are familiar with Schools Plus, but many of you probably haven't had much connection with us in the past. So let me start by saying that Schools Plus is a not-for-profit organisation, and we're all about making sure that students are able to fulfil their potential, no matter their background or their location. And so what we were established to do was to connect donors who really know the value of great education with the schools who are going to most benefit from that support. So we were established following the initial Gonski review some years ago now, and that review highlighted that there were many donors who wanted to support schools, particularly in less advanced communities, but just didn't really know how to, and there was no easy way to make that happen. So we've basically been established to kind of be that matchmaker, that channel through which funds are able to be driven to many schools. And we do that by providing tax deductibility for donations, which is something that really wasn't available to schools in the past, except in quite rare circumstances. We have a special tax status that's been granted to us called deductible gift recipient status, and that makes donations tax deductible, but it also enables schools to go to some philanthropic sources like trusts and foundations that are only allowed to give to CPR organisations. Yeah. We've also set up the Fundraise Yourself platform that Beth referred to make it really simple for schools to connect with their community. And we're going to talk in a lot more detail about that as we go on. And we've tried really hard to develop a whole range of resources and tools and support that are there to help your school fundraise better and really fundraise for those projects that are going to make your students. We're hoping today through the chat that you guys are able to share some stories, but also that through working with us in the future, you'll be able to hear from some other schools and learn from their experiences. I've talked a little bit about how Schools Plus is set up to support schools in need, and the way we define disadvantage is through the ICSIA scale. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that is the Index of Community Socio-Educational Advantage. And every school in Australia has a value on the ICSIA scale, and you can find that by going to the My School website and looking up your school's profile. But schools that are eligible for support through us are those that have an ICSIA value below 1,000. Let me just say as well that since we started a few years ago, Schools Plus has been able to fund more than 330 projects that have benefited more than 80,000 students. You just did the sum from that at our kind of third anniversary, and we're really thrilled to see that level of support from donors. we're really wanting to make it easy for schools and PNCs. So through our Fundraise Yourself platform, you're able to go out to your community using a unique web link to share with your network. You can make it really visual using photos and videos, and you're also able to access your donors' details so you can take them directly. We'll hold it there on Fundraise Yourself for now, because we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on.
Great. So let's start by talking about setting up the perfect project. So the project plan is really the foundation to your fundraising. This is something that is going to help formalise what you're trying to do and what you're trying to raise funds for. And it helps also enable people who are working with you on your fundraising to understand what it is that you're trying to raise funds for and what are those goals and targets. So we've taken some elements of a much larger project plan and really just pulled out those key parts that we think are really important to include in a fundraising plan if you were to put one together.
Yeah, great. And at this point, when we start talking about projects, it would be really fantastic if you interacted here and use that chat function to tell us about the sorts of projects that you're trying to fundraise for, because that way we can kind of tailor our comments to what you're doing. So jump on the chat function now and let us know about that.
Yes, I can see Carol. Thank you. Carol is raising funds for a cola for the school.
A covered outdoor learning area. That was an acronym that I had to learn when I first started here. And Natalie, thanks for your contribution as well. Natalie's school, they're trying to fundraise for a kitchen garden, which is a project that we've seen a few schools.
Yes, yes, so thank you everyone. Some other ones that we see commonly come through schools raising funds for playground equipment, robotics equipment.
Yeah, lots of laptops.
Yeah.
And landscaping projects as well.
Yeah, which is great. So there's a number of key elements that we would recommend including in a project plan. The first one is the project date. So this is when you are actually going to start your project. This could include getting quotes for the kitchen garden, for example. So it's really when you're starting to start that project and when it is that you're going to finish it. And the finished product doesn't necessarily mean, okay, garden's in, project's done. There might be some elements after that that you need to do as well. It's, thanking people, it's wrapping up, it's paying invoices, it's things like that. So it might run a little bit longer than once that sort of thing is purchased or done. And these dates are also different to when you would be fundraising as well. Because your project, as I said, might start tomorrow when you are getting quotes for the landscape garden. You can't start fundraising yet because you don't know what your fundraising target is. So you might not start fundraising for maybe another 1 or 2 months, depending on what you've got all the information together. So setting those project dates is really key, and that is something that enables you to keep track of how that project's going. And keep on target and keep other team members across what those goals are as well. The purpose and beneficiaries. So why are you doing this project and who is it going to benefit? So it's important here to be able to articulate who those people are that's going to benefit, so whether that's students, is that teachers, is it a combination of both, how many students, is it year 9, is it year 7, just understanding who it is that's going to benefit from what it is that you're doing and why is it that you are doing this project. So, for example, using that the COLA, at the moment it's concrete outside the canteen and it's unusable space because in summer it's really hot and in winter it's too cold and we can't use it for anything else. So by building the COLA, it means that you're able to use that space more.
More learning, more learning activities, absolutely.
That's right. So having that understanding really keeps you on track to your purpose and keeps you on track to those beneficiaries of the activities that you are. And this then moves down into then the project description. So by having your purpose and beneficiaries clear, it will help you understand and articulate what that project means. So what are you raising money for?
Yeah, and this is where you might go into a bit more detail about, obviously the things that you're raising money for and how they're going to be used as well.
Yes, that's right. So linking it back into the purpose and the beneficiaries. As I said about the COLA, currently we have a space that's unusable. We're trying to raise money to ensure that the students have an additional space to learn.
Yeah, and then you can talk about how those students will be learning in that space, how often, and what sort of activities that will be used for.
What is the cost? So how much is your project and what are the funds being spent on? So again, this is where you're gathering all that information to help you understand your overall target to raise the funds. So you'd be getting some quotes, you're understanding that breakdown of those costs that are involved. You're also having a think about, well, what funding sources have we already secured some money from? So is it that we've managed to get a grant already, or the P&C has some funds that they're going to allocate to it, or the school? So what have you already got? What else do you need to secure? And potentially, where are those funds going to come from? So having an understanding around that funding sources as well. So you might put this on a spreadsheet or a document somewhere where you can sort of understand that income and the task.
Yeah, that will really help you understand kind of where you need to put your efforts and what efforts you use to raise the funds.
Yeah, that's right. And by breaking down your targets, it can help you celebrate your wins too, which is really important when you're fundraising. To have, great, we've raised $5,000, let's celebrate, or we've secured that grant, or whatever it might be. So I think that's something that's important to consider.
And the final part of the project plan would be to record who the team members are as well, who's involved in the project. Fundraising is, can be a bit of a hard slog, so it's useful not to just rely on one person to do that, but to have, parents through the P&C or other organisations. Teachers may need to be involved as well. The principal obviously plays a key role in any project that's being implemented at a school and needs to be on board. There might be suppliers involved, but keeping a record of all of those people. So, we know that P&Cs have high turnover or teaching staff move on. If your project is going over a period of time, it just means that the information is captured and can be passed on to any newcomers there as well.
That's right. So, how to tell your story. So you put the hard work in with your project plan. You know how much it is you want to raise. You know what you're trying to raise the funds for and who's going to benefit. So now how to put together something that's really going to be descriptive enough that if you were speaking to a potential donor or you're having to write an application for a grant, that you've got a really clear, succinct story to tell. So we've broken it down into the 3 elements here. So what do you want to do? So we want to upgrade the library for our students as it's currently underused in our schools. So why is this important? Our 150 students need a better space to read and learn. So you can see here we've been specific around how many students that is going to benefit. So those funders or potential funders can see the impact that their contribution can make.
Yeah, I think that's really good practice as well, to be specific where you can about the numbers of beneficiaries rather than just saying our students. So the donor does get a really clear picture about what difference their donation is going to make.
That's right. And what are the benefits this will have for your students and or the school? So again, around that purpose and the beneficiaries. So the funds raised will transform the space into a great reading area and provide technology and equipment students will feel welcome. So you can have a clear message there about what those funds are going to do. They're going to purchase new technology equipment, and you can see there that outcome of by having that new equipment is that the students will feel welcome and having fun based on learning.
And sometimes you might want to expand your project plan. I mean, that's a kind of very simple example of a project plan, but sometimes funders will want more information, particularly if you're starting to apply for grants. So these are some extra questions that you might want to consider, and we have these project plans, a quite simple one and an expanded one that is available to you when you register as well to help guide you on this. But you know, here you might want to consider what the activities are going to be. So you know, talking about that library, it might be something that's used during class, where kids come regularly to access the technology. There might be some place where the students are going to use it at lunchtime for a coding club or a reading club or some other kind of activity at lunchtime or before and after school. There might also be community groups that are welcome to use the library as well. And those sorts of things would be the sorts of activities that you might outline there. Often in a grant application particularly, but even when you're seeking funds from any donor, you know, it might be good to tell them about what the expected outcomes are going to be, you know, in a bit more detail. So, you know, how do you think that this is going to impact on student learning? Are they going to be able to learn new skills because they have access to this different space and different equipment? You know, with the kitchen garden, for instance, you know, you can get this kind of fun outcomes. There's outdoor, you know, being exposed to the outdoors rather than being inside classrooms all the time. But there are really strong connections to curriculum as well around math, science, everything that's otherwise done. So just taking Natalie's example earlier, there are a lot of health and well-being, but also student learning outcomes right about there. And then how will you measure the project's results? Most grants funders will ask you to tell them about how you're going to measure these outcomes. And these might be things like attendance data or student achievement data. There are surveys often that schools do or that you could do in your school to kind of measure how engaged kids are before and after your project. Photos. Yeah, you know, that's right. Yeah. Like photos and videos. Yeah, absolutely. So there's some examples of additional questions that you could consider.
All right, so before we move into the next section, did we have any questions about the projects and anything that we might be able to help you with?
Yeah, look, Natalie's asked a question here about should we link expected outcomes to students' curriculum outcomes or change it to plain English? And that's a good question because you know, it really depends on who you're applying to as well there. I would say, and you know, in this section here, we're going to be talking about different places to go. But I would suggest that if you're approaching people who are less familiar with, you know, school environment and the curriculum outcomes, you do make that in plain English. But, you know, I know that the Department of Education often offers grants as well and asks you to be very specific about the curriculum outcomes. So really, you should always tailor it depending on who you're approaching for funding. Yeah. Great.
So finding funds. In this section, we're going to cover some different elements. So really around who are you going to approach to help support your project? How are you going to reach them? We're going to talk about some grant writing tips and some thank you ideas when you do secure those funds. So let's get started. So who are you going to approach? So we've put a couple of examples here that we wanted to talk through. So firstly, we've got family and their friends. So this might be families at the school. Now we do know that families get asked quite a lot for support within the school, whether that's financially or their time. So you might wish to tailor the ask that you're making to family and friends. So instead of asking them for financial support, it might be as simple as asking them to spread the word about what it is you're trying to do. So if you're using the Schools Plus online crowdfunding platform, you would have a web link to your project and you could ask them to share that with 5 of their friends. So they're still feeling involved and part of what you're trying to do at the school, but also not having to put their hand in their pocket there. And that would also go for the school staff and their contacts. So, you know, teachers and school staff, again, they put in a lot of extra above and beyond within the school as well. So this might be the same sort of approach with the school staff. It's by sending them the web link or asking them to share with their network. So spreading it beyond and outside that school gate is really going to help you to reach new supporters and widen that support network as well.
And we've had some really good examples of success actually through that. I can think of a couple of examples where either family or teachers have spread the word, circulated it by email or through social media. And what has resulted has been some really quite significant donations from local businesses or, you know, other contacts of those family and staff, you know, helping schools get really close to their target. And those people might not have heard about it otherwise.
Yes, that's right.
So that's a good way to approach new donors.
Yeah. So school suppliers. So this might be worth having a chat to your principal or the administration manager at the school about this, and having a think about, well, who supplies items into our school? Who does the school pay to supply the canteen equipment or the pens and the paper and things like that? That you might be able to approach for some support, whether that's in kind, where it might be some items that you might be able to use to help with your project, or financial support. So asking them for a donation to help with your project, and because we have that tax deductibility, that might be a benefit to a business who might be interested in supporting the school, and they see firsthand, you know, the impact of the project if they do come into the school gate.
They've got connection, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Local businesses. So having a think about who is in your area that you might be able to ask for support. This would be a good brainstorming thing to have with people on your fundraising committee. You know, write up a big list of everyone that people might know who knows someone who works at a company that you might be able to approach with support. Again, having that tax deductible incentive might be appealing to businesses.
Absolutely. I'd also suggest that you approach your local council or your state or federal MPs as well. Quite often councils and state and federal MPs have grants rounds, you know, regular grants rounds that, you know, that might be suitable for your school and might be a new avenue of getting some funds. And if they don't actually run them themselves, they're quite often tapped into, you know, others who do. So we've heard of one federal MP, I think, who, you know, once you got onto their mailing list, you heard quite regularly about other grant opportunities that were out there. So if you haven't already kind of got a decent relationship with your council or your MPs, then it's not a bad way to start to make a call to them and get to know them a bit better.
Definitely, absolutely. That's a really good one. They love a photo opportunity. So
that's right, the picture. Foundations and other charities as well is another potential avenue for you. So, you know, some areas have a community foundation that supports them. So, you know, get online and see if there's such a thing that exists in your area. And also, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we get into the section about applying for grants. But, you know, lots of charities and foundations do run grants rounds where they make, you know, thousands of dollars available regularly to organisations. So, you know, check out what's available and think about, you know, what might fit the project that you're trying to fundraise for.
Community clubs. So having a thing in your area, is there a Lions Club, a Rotary, Zonta, any of those sorts of clubs that might support projects within their local area, and approaching them. And we'll talk in the next slide about how to approach your local community clubs. But they're certainly, you know, their charter is to support whether that is financially or with volunteer, you know, power as well.
Yeah. The business chamber, I guess we talked a little bit about local businesses, but going up that next step sometimes, you know, there are often a business chamber that operates across the region, often has a website as well. With a list, that's right, a list of all the businesses that are members of that business chamber. So going and checking out that list, and that might provide you with some new ideas. And also, while we're talking about businesses as well, quite often big companies that have come in to do some, you know, construction work or something like that in a region, quite often they offer, you know, grant opportunities for local community organisations that, you know, might be affected. So, you know, thinking about what's going on in your community and then checking out what might be available from those sorts of organisations is also a way of going. Yeah. Sometimes the school might have had donors in the past as well. You know, some schools, you know, fundraise for faith or other events, and they've had local donors donate either cash or, you know, product. You know, you might want to go back to those donors and let them know that Schools Plus now allows them to make donations that are tax deductible, and that incentive, as we said, you know, might appeal to them to give again.
And ex-students, so you know, thinking about students that might have left the school, who, you know, are alumni of the school, that you could get in touch with to see if they would like to support schools. We've had a number of students, ex-students of schools approach us, knowing now they can get a tax deduction for their donation, and they've wanted to support their old school, and they're in a position to be able to do that. So they've approached their school and been quite generous in the support. So, you know, it might be, you might be starting from scratch. You may have no alumni list. So, you know, please get in touch with Schools Plus if that is something that you wanted to grow within your school, and that would be happy to help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how are you going to reach your donors, and I guess also how are you going to approach them? Because every donor or potential funder, you would tailor that message and tailor that approach depending on who it is that you're approaching. So, you know, in general, reaching out to your community, you might include a notice in your newsletter. So if you're able to, you know, put something in there, let the community know what it is that you're raising funds for, and where they can go to support that project. And that also goes for including a story on your newsletter too. You know, let people know when, as soon as they go to your website, what is it, how can they help, what is it that you're trying to raise funds for. And if you do put a project on the Schools Plus website, you can put a donate button and link straight to your project.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sharing the message on social media is also a good way. Many schools have a Facebook page, and obviously that's a great way, as we're talking about, for families and friends and staff to circulate that even further. So, you know, using social media in whatever form is a great way to get the message out widely. And I'm just going to jump down the bottom there. We're talking about emailing a message as well, so it can be shared really easily. You know, again, emailing to people and then asking them to spread the word further. That's a quick and easy way to do it. And always, if you do have it, with a link back to where they can donate.
Yeah, that's right. And we've said that LinkedIn, you know, is a great way to reach your alumni as well, or just putting a message on there if you do have LinkedIn as a school or personally that you can share with them what it is that you're trying to raise funds for.
I'm going to talk a bit more about applying for grants in a minute, but Beth, why don't you talk about your experience in presenting to community groups? We talked about them as being a good option as well.
Yeah, I've had personal experience in presenting to a Rotary Club to seek funds for a charity, but we've also had a chat to a president of the Rotary Club, and I asked him, how is it best for schools to be able to approach you for support? And the key tips that he gave were, if you have a contact at a Rotary Club already, so perhaps talk to your school principal or business manager or someone within the school if you don't know, just to check to see if there is a contact that you have, and get in touch with them firstly. Pick up the phone, have a conversation. you know, using your succinct message about what it is that you're trying to raise funds for, and share what that is with them. If you don't have a contact, go onto the website, and they'll often have the president of your local Rotary listed there, and generally with a contact number as well. So the same approach will apply there. If they're happy to have a chat and find out a little bit more, they will more than likely invite you to present at one of their Rotary Club meetings. And this is a real chance for you to be able to showcase what it is that you are trying to raise funds for. So having a think about, okay, should I be putting a PowerPoint presentation together? Should I appropriate bring a student in to tell a story, or a parent, or a teacher, or, you know, how is it best that I'm going to get across what it is that we're trying to raise funds for, and have that really succinct story to tell and that message, and sharing with them the difference that it'll make. And then hopefully being able to secure those funds, and or volunteer support. You know, if you're doing that kitchen garden, you know, you might be able to reduce costs by having a gang of people come in and help out clearing that land and planting these trees.
Yeah, absolutely. So support, you're right, good point. The support doesn't necessarily just come in the form of funding, of money, but you know, there might be other ways that organisations can support you as well. And the last idea that we had on there is the handwritten card is a nice touch. So this is a, you know, a different way of you know, making people listen, or, you know, look at what you're planning to do. It's pretty rare these days you get a handwritten card. So think about who you're sending it to, and if that seems like a good approach, then you can try that one out.
Follow it up with a phone call or something. So yeah.
Okay, so let's talk now a little bit about applying for grants, because I know that's something that a lot of schools and PNCs are really interested in. And it'd be really good to hear from you if you've had much success at doing this, if you've had a go at applying for grants, and whether that's been successful or not. But these are some tips around applying for grants. The first thing I'd say is, you know, do your research on the grant maker, on the organisation that you're applying to. You know, again, thinking about the projects that you're putting in place, and, you know, what organisation is the right place to apply to. And there's lots of information out there that will kind of give you a good clues about whether it's the right fit or not. Particularly the guidelines, you know, always read the guidelines, because they're, you know, someone's put quite a lot of effort into those guidelines, and try to make it really clear about what projects they're seeking to support. You know, if an organisation is all about supporting mental health and your project is a STEM project, you know, that's not going to be the right fit, obviously, but you know, make sure that you do that research first. The next one seems pretty obvious, but make sure you're eligible as well. For Schools Plus, for instance, if you're applying to us to kind of seek our funding, our support in raising funds, you know, our main eligibility criteria is around that ISPEA value that we talked about before. And every funding organisation has some sort of eligibility criteria. So, you know, make sure you're in the right location, for instance, or, you know, you have the right number of beneficiaries, some are particular, you know, numbers of people to benefit, or demographics of people to benefit, or it might be about the level of funding that you're seeking. But, you know, there's always some eligibility criteria to check that you need. And just on that about the DGR status as well, just to remind you that some organisations will only be able to give to organisations that have DGR status. And if that's the case with the, you know, grant maker, the funder that you're interested in applying to, that's where we can come in and help and apply on your behalf. So give us a call if you find yourself in that situation.
And the other thing with the guidelines is it also enables you to understand, is this the right grant that we want to apply for? So are there restrictions on it that you may not be able to meet? Or, you know, it might be that you have to spend the grant within a certain time, and that just doesn't apply to your project. Or, you know, the reporting requirements are just, it's too much, or it's not fitting. So the guidelines will include information like that enables you to make those decisions.
Yeah, good point, good point. So the third point there, be clear, concise, compelling, and specific. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that when you're writing your applications can be really tricky to write. I mean, often they are quite limiting, word counts that you have to stick to. So you have to get a lot of information into not very many words. So, choose your words carefully. Be really clear. Don't use kind of jargon. Don't use acronyms. The person who's reading the application when you submit it, isn't necessarily going to know what your PACD is. You need to spell out those sorts of things so that they can really understand what's happening in your school. Be concise. Again, that comes down to the word limit quite often. That they don't give you much space to tell a story. So you have to be choosy about what you're going to say. And often that's kind of the facts about the numbers of beneficiaries, what you're planning to do, and why you're planning to do it. Yeah, and that's where the compelling part comes in, I guess. What difference are you trying to make, and what difference is this project going to make? Talk about who your students are and how you want to change their situation as a result of this funding. And the specific one refers to things like the numbers of beneficiaries. Not just saying that you're expecting attendance to rise, but if you can be specific about it, how many students are going to benefit, what attendance is going to rise by 10%. Students are going to spend 3 hours more a week doing whatever it is that they're doing. Include a clear and thorough budget, and make sure that the budget talks back to the activities that are in there as well. So that it connects, tells the story the whole way through. Sometimes we see applications that are all about a STEM project, and then at the end of it there's a budget that includes money for a car or something like that. I don't understand how this fits together.
There was no mention of that anywhere else.
So make sure that what's in your budget matches back with the rest of the application, and that you're kind of specific in there. Rather than just saying technology for $10,000, you might want to explain that it's donor iPads or robotics or that sort of thing. And finally, don't forget to submit the application on time. Always check. Yeah, very important, because often there's a cutoff and you can't submit it after that cutoff time. And funders often aren't very flexible around that.
So check the state if there's daylight savings or in a different time zone. We've had situations where the internet has gone down, they've not been able to submit it. So by leaving you enough time to be able to press that submit button, it helps with any challenges that might arise.
Those last minute hiccups are almost guaranteed, I think.
That's right.
Here's a few suggestions for places to look for grants that might be available. Fundingcentre.com.au runs a kind of grants list that you can kind of filter depending on what you're interested in applying for. There is a cost associated with that, but I know some PNCs have paid more and it's really useful. Tender Bridge is a free service though, and it's all about education funding opportunities. So sign up to that one. And we've also heard from some schools about that third option there has also been something they've used and found useful. If you hear of any others, let us know as well.
Yes. So don't forget to say thank you. So hopefully you've secured some funding, and now it's time to say thank you. And just to keep them updated with the project. And let them know where those funds have gone. So we've just listed a few examples here, and you might choose one or two, or you might just do it in different levels depending on the donation that's coming, that amount, and it can be as creative as you want or as simple as you want. We've had examples where we've given really beautiful hand-drawn messages from students to donors, and that's just been really heartwarming to them and made a big difference to those that donation that they've made.
Absolutely, and as the last one says, be prepared to report back to grant makers. We've talked about the conditions that there might be on the grant where you need to fill in a quick form at the end with invoices or receipts, that sort of thing. So understand what those requirements are going to be and be prepared for them. And finally, you know, I always like to say that you shouldn't be afraid about applying for grants or asking people for donations. You're not making that ask on behalf of yourself. The money's not going to you. You're asking for a really good cause, and that's the students at your school that you know you're asking those donors to really make a difference for. So you've got to be in it to win it. Give it a go.
That's right. All right. So does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. All right. All right. So Schools Plus developed an online crowdfunding platform for schools and parent associations to use. I'm now going to step you through how the platform works and how schools can use it. So you can see here on our first slide, this is an example of what the platform looks like once you have published the project. So we've got a small tile here where it's got the photo, it's got a short little blurb about the project, so a little snippet enough to get a donor interested, and then they can click to find out more, or they can directly donate there and then. Once they click on the Find Out More button, it takes you through to the laptops. Well, in this example, laptops for learning, but it takes you through to a broader project description. So it's a much longer description. You can have multiple photos. It's got the target and the goal that they are trying to raise for, and how much they've already raised as well. In this example, you can see that they've broken down their target into bite-sized chunks. So they've really put a donation level against an item that it might go towards to support with their fundraising.
And that's really useful, isn't it? I think there's lots of research actually that shows that encourages people to donate at those particular levels. Gives them a bit of an incentive. You know, if they were going to donate for $15, they'll knock it up to 20. To kind of, because they understand what that's going to go towards.
That's right. So how to register your school and your project. So I'm going to run through that on our website. So firstly, we would go to the Schools Plus website. And on the Schools Plus website, you can see that there is a button for schools. And under that are some different menus of ways that we can support schools using through our different programs. So please feel free to explore that and how we can support your school. In this case, we're looking at the Fundraise Yourself platform, and we're going to log in and register the school. So we click on the school login register button, which takes you through to this page, and you click on the register button there. Some things to think about before you get started. So you'd need to have on hand your logo as a JPEG. You need to have your principal's email address and phone number, and details of a second contact who would be involved in the project, and your school bank account details. There are some guidelines to read as well, and these guidelines go into more detail around what's involved with using the platform, and we've highlighted some here that you would need to tick to get through to the next section. So the project must lead to improved outcomes. The school is going to be responsible for driving the campaign. Funds raised will be transferred by Schools Plus on a monthly basis, and my school will be required to fill in a short acquittal form as well. So then you click on the next button. We've preloaded all of the eligible schools into our system already, so you can just start typing your school, and all of the schools eligible for support will come up. So you can choose, so in this example, we're going to choose this school, and it will search through the system, and you click next. This is where we are gathering the information about the school ready to be registered. So you would upload your school logo here, the school website, phone number. So anything with a green asterisk is mandatory to include. school email, and this is gathering the information around of the principal and an alternate contact. So it could be any contact at the school that is relevant to what you're trying to do with your project. And this is where we collect your banking information, so we know where to transfer those funds. So it might be into a school bank account if the school is going to be paying for the project elements, or it might be a P&C who is paying those invoices and sending that funding. So just include the relevant bank details there, and you press submit. So once that has submitted, you then have access through to the back end of the platform. So this is what the platform looks like when you register. It would have your school logo, it would have your school name there, and there's some different headings that you can access different areas. So, for example, our resources tab. This resources tab contains all different types of resources and templates that we've developed that might be useful for your project or getting those funds in.
So this is where you'll find things like the project plans that we were talking about, some sample project profiles to help you kind of figure out how to write your project profile, but also things like the emails that you might send out to potential donors or to local businesses, or even a kind of template for a media release if you're trying to get a bit of local media coverage for your fundraising campaign as well.
That's right. So we've tried to include as much in here as we can that will help support your campaign. Always adding to it. If you have extra things that you think would be really useful, please get in touch and let us know. So here is all the projects that you might have listed that you are fundraising for. If you do want to create a new project, you click on the Create Project button, and this takes you through to the project form, and this is where you will start talking about what it is that you want to raise those funds for. So having some clear ideas and messaging around that project is going to be really useful for you at this stage. And what we do recommend is typing that project information into a Word document first. That just helps you, gives you a backup in case something happens, but also helps you get your thoughts together and how you want to write that story. Again, make sure you've read those guidelines. We've got writing tips, project writing tips in the resources section to help you with that. Have a clear photo, but make sure it's under 2 meg, and a photo that's really going to promote and share what it is that you're trying to raise funds for.
Yes, I can see questions come through from Ben. He's asking whether his school could put up a couple of projects at a time. What would you advise around that?
So yes, it does just depend. If you are approaching your broad community, we recommend having one project up at a time so that you're able to share and keep that support to just that one project. If you have in mind a particular business or a particular grant or something that you're going to find funds for that's completely different, you can absolutely put a second project up, and because you're just targeting one audience for that project. So it really does depend, but in general we would suggest concentrating your efforts on the one fundraising project at a time. So with this, we're collecting who is the project contact. Now this might be different depending on who is actually driving that project. So you would just choose who that is and include their details there. There's some information here that just to give us a bit of an idea around how it is that you are fundraising. So is it being driven by the Parents and Citizens Association? Are you raising money for a building? So there's certain things here that we would need to capture to give us that information. And around, a project title, so something catchy that's going to catch people's eye, and how much is it that you're wanting to fundraise for. Here, project category, so choosing a category that's going to fit in with what it is that you are raising funds for, because this will help when people are searching on our website if they are looking to support a girls focused project, for example, there is a section there that they can choose, and it will show all the girls focused projects. Here, how many students are going to benefit? So putting that in, are there teachers that are going to benefit as well? When are you going to start your actual fundraising campaign online, and when is that going to finish? Again, this is different to your project start and end date, potentially, because your project may not start until you've raised enough funds to get that project started, or it might start before you've started fundraising. So these might be different, but your fundraising online dates are really focused around that fundraising effort that you're going to do, and the project start and end date is really focused on the implementation of that project. And here is where you're going to be capturing and writing about your project. So we've put some couple of hints here. So why do you need donations? Tell us about the activities that are going to take place. Who's going to benefit, and what difference will this donation make? So write it as though you're appealing to a donor, because this is what they're going to see on the website.
Absolutely, this is, I mean, what this will do is, this is the information that will go onto that project profile that you'll then be able to share around with all your network. So yeah, you want to, this is really where you can tell that compelling story about, you know, how they're going to make a difference.
That's right. And here is just that short description, and that's the description that appears on that tile. You can upload up to 4 images that will appear on your project. You can even include a video if you've got a video that shows what it is that you're trying to raise funds for. You might create something fun with the students to get that message out there, so you can include that link. And here is where you can list those donation levels. If you did want to chunk down that target, you might have some different levels here. So we've said, for example, you would say my donation level is $100, and this could pay for 5 books for our reading group. Budget table, list out here the types of items that you will be purchasing with the funds that you've raised, and make sure that the total equals your fundraising target that you've indicated at the top. And then there's the T's and C's, and once you tick those, you submit for review. What happens then is it comes through to myself, and I have a read through with fresh eyes. So I'm looking at it saying, okay, if I'm a donor, does this make sense to me? Is this clear of what they want to raise funds for? And I would have a conversation with you about maybe changing some things or any questions that I might have about that project. And if all good, we then publish it, and it then appears back on our website, and able to spread that word. So just to recap, register your school, so at schoolsplus.org.au, then register your project, and then spread the word. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you found the information useful. If you've got further questions, please get in touch with myself or with Rachel at Schools Plus. Our phone number and email address is there. We also suggest subscribing to our newsletter to register your school, and you can do that at our website as well. Our newsletter we send out when there's opportunities for schools where there might be some support available, or new opportunities that come up.
Absolutely, and follow us on our social media as well. That's another way that we get the news out about funding opportunities, or other ways that we can work with you and
what other schools are doing as well. So
yeah,
there's some great stories